Hey, what's good, y'all? It's time for the hunting debate, which is an extremely controversial topic in the vegan community. And man, I just really can't wrap my head around why. It seems pretty simple if you ask me, but I'll save my opinion for after we get this ball rolling and you guys get a good idea of exactly what we're talking about. And I won't spoil it. I'll just get right into it. Why hunting is wrong in 99% of cases. I've been vegan for many years and was vegetarian all my life before that. So it was sort of ingrained in me that hunting was wrong and completely unnecessary in 99% of cases. Please know I'm not including the native population / people who have no other choice. However, I think I have trouble articulating exactly why hunting is wrong. Of course, the animal doesn't deserve to panic or suffer or die. That's obvious to me. But the hypothetical person I'm arguing with may not be convinced by that, right? I think an easy argument for hunting is overpopulation, which I recognize is an issue. But are certain species, deer, overpopulated as a result of humans? Are we to blame for it in the first place? Did we create the problem? Now, we're going to be talking about 3 different posts centered around hunting. Well, I guess 2.5. One of them is actually just about moral superiority, just straight up, but more on that later. But let me address this as it is in its current form. They're asking, is it humans' fault that deer are overpopulated? Well, yeah, we definitely played a role in overpopulation in several different aspects of environments. I mean, think about the abundance of pythons in like the Florida Everglades, That's definitely something that humans caused. They're an invasive species, and as a result, it is our responsibility to also get rid of many of those pythons to protect those ecosystems. The deer population is no different. Obviously, when we build homes, we build roads, we take up space, we knock down trees. Obviously, the deer and stuff get rehomed, but a lot of them also stay. Have you noticed that in many suburbs with just even a few trees nearby, you're likely to run into some deer? Maybe with your eyes, but also possibly with your car if you're not careful. That's an extremely common thing. And it's because if you look around, there's really not too many natural predators for deer. I mean, what's hunting a deer? I mean, coyotes might be able to take down a fawn, or a very weak deer that's sick or something, but for the most part, there's nothing really hunting them actively. Now, in some areas where wolves still exist, you got those, but where I'm at, we don't have wolves. We don't really have natural predators for deer, so yeah, deer population is kind of maxing out quickly. Overpopulation is definitely an issue from where I'm from, which again, yes, humans played a role in that. Or like when we drove out all the predators from, I believe it was Yellowstone or something like that. Some people wrote this on one of my videos recently commenting about the, I'll show the comments actually. So this is the comment from my awesome loyal supporters, been watching my channels forever now. Super Saiyan Bino, thank you for this, my friend. They commented, more proof of vegans being uneducated, no clue about the balance of nature. Since they like to look up things on the internet, they need to look up what happened when they eradicated wolves in Yellowstone. Here's a more detailed breakdown. Elk population explosion. Without wolves to control their numbers, elk populations grew significantly. Overgrazing. The increased elk population results in overgrazing, particularly of willows and aspen, which are crucial for beavers and other species. Beaver decline. Beavers rely on willows for food and dam construction. Overgrazing reduced their food supply and habitat, leading to a decline in beaver populations, erosion, and habitat loss. Beavers create wetlands and slow down stream flow with their dams. The loss of beavers and willows led to increased stream erosion, deeper and faster flowing streams, and habitat loss for fish and other species. Impact on other species. The decline in willows and aspen affected songbirds, which rely on these trees for nesting and foraging. Furthermore, the lack of vegetation also impacted grizzly bears, as berry-producing plants were also overgrazed. Changed river dynamics. Without the vegetation and beaver dams to slow down water flow, rivers became wider and less stable, negatively impacting fish populations and other riparian species. Trophic cascade. The changes in vegetation and animal population due to wolf removal illustrate a trophic cascade where the removal of a top predator impacts the entire ecosystem. But sure, feelings. So brother here absolutely hooked with explaining why population control is so important. And here's the thing, we're going to get to these comments in a second. That's where the real argument is. That's where the real interesting bits are. But their problem isn't necessarily that they don't want populations to be controlled. They just don't want want humans to do it. They would rather have wolves in their backyard, so when they irresponsibly leave their 3-year-old vegan toddler outside in the back and not pay attention, and a wolf comes and snipes up their kid, that's what they would prefer. But this is coupled with a lot more controversy around hunting that we'll see in just a moment. So this is the very first comment, and this is where we're going to start. Yes, we took out their natural predators. This person says, I am all for reintroduction of wolves if it improves biodiversity. But for the deer, does it matter if it is hunted by humans or wolves? I think it's better to die from a bullet to the heart than from being torn apart by wolves. And we get this counter from this proud 2 years plus vegan. Wolves are going to catch the weakest, slow, and injured. Not always. Humans will try to kill the biggest and strongest. Not always. Which messes up natural selection. Again, not always. Or honestly, not at all. If this were the case, and this messed up natural selection, I mean, I know humans have driven some animals to extinction, that's because of overhunting, but natural selection has never really been at the forefront of environmental issues with hunting. Humans reduce a population. It doesn't really mess up with natural selection because these populations, especially of deer, continue to thrive and do well. It has never really been a cause for concern, so I don't know where the fuck this guy got that idea from. This person responds, fair. That mostly applies to trophy hunting though. I've known hunters that primarily tried to hunt weak, old, or injured deer. In one case, they were specifically after a deer that had lost a leg in a traffic accident to put it out of its misery. Still, in terms or individual suffering, getting killed sucks whether you are weak or strong. This person says this is why culling should be left to professional animal control and not hobbyists. This person says, reintroduction of predators versus killing animals ourselves is good because their agonizing deaths produce patterns that benefit biodiversity. I'm all for reintroduction of wolves, but in the context of this conversation, I think plant biodiversity is a pretty callous thing to bring up as the important factor. Now, this person has probably the most smooth brain take I've seen on this post so far. I agree logically, but more morally, I would say it is better to die by someone desperate to kill you who does it for food versus by someone who doesn't have to kill you but does it just for fun. So what I want to talk about is this idea that, oh, people would rather reintroduce predators instead of having humans control population or have the professionals do it, not the hobbyists. So let me ask you something. Do animals suffer more from being, shot and killed instantly or from being eaten alive for like an hour straight? Because that is what happens to a lot of animals when they're killed in the wild. Maybe not a full hour. I've seen it happen for a while, but those were, at the jaws of cats, which tend to keep their food alive for longer. Wolves are usually a bit more deliberate in ending their prey, but not always either. Sometimes they do suffer for much longer. So the question is, would they rather these deer suffer for much, much longer when dying or be shot? And their answer is for them to suffer for longer, which is odd because that kind of contradicts the whole idea that veganism is a philosophy based in reducing animal suffering. If the reduction of animal suffering is an instant kill to the head from a hunter with a good shot in a rifle, wouldn't they want that? No, because it's not pro-animal, it's anti-human. And it's because they don't want those humans to have the satisfaction of killing an animal and then eating it. They don't want that because they hate people. And they also don't care about the animals because if they did, they would want the quicker, significantly less painful death for these animals, but they don't. They want them to suffer. They want wolves to rip and tear these animals apart and make them suffer and bleed out for as long as possible. Wow. Shocker, isn't it? I mean, at this point, just say you don't actually care about animals and you just hate people, because that's definitely what it seems like. That coupled with obviously moral superiority. Moving on to the next post. The amount of hunting apologia on here is disgusting. Hunters are good actually, and they're better than people who buy meat at supermarkets because they actively relish in the animal torture themselves. Sentiment needs to go. It has no place here. Every fucking hunter has endless pictures with shit-eating grin on their face, holding up tortured/butchered animals which had no idea they were participating in their sick game. And they're only too proud to share them with you, like a serial killer's cherished altar decorated with mementos from their victims that they worship. Hunters are the fucking worst of humanity. There's absolutely nothing noble about what they do. Every hunter I've met is upper middle class and privileged as fuck. The cost to buy a bunch of weapons and ammunition every year dwarfs the cost of just eating beans, grains, and produce. There's nothing good about hunting, and seeing it actively upvoted on a vegan sub is fucking disgraceful. And so you're gonna have to give me a moment to fully break this one down and dissect it. But this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. One of the things things that vegans complain about the absolute most is the horrors of factory farming, right? The animals growing up, living in these terrible confined spaces, going through absolute hell every single day. That's the way they describe it. And then, eventually being killed and, turned into food. They have a huge problem with that. So that's the big bad. That's the boogeyman. That's what they want to take down first and foremost. But then if somebody hunts for their food, right? They don't put these animals through these conditions of factory farming and all that, and then they quickly kill them to then have food for themselves. Now for this guy, this person that contributes to this is the lowest of the low, the scummiest of the scum, the worst of all humanity. See, that's what I've been saying. This is the anti-human propaganda bullshit that you see in the vegan community so much, and it runs rampant, and it's almost unbelievable. I think that most vegans actually cared about the reduction of animal suffering would actually prefer this, because then those animals didn't live a life of suffering and had a quick, less painful death than being killed by a carnivorous animal or just the conditions of factory farming. Somehow, according to many people on this vegan thread, that this is even worse, which doesn't make sense, but it's because they're upset about the humans themselves having pride in doing this, being happy about it, even celebrating it, because you don't see that same celebratory culture in like factory farming. Nobody's celebrating when a cow is processed fully through the system, but they do celebrate when they get a good hunt, right? Which, as somebody who's empathetic towards animals and understands hunting and understands the human's nature as a predator, an apex predator, I have no issues with this. No issues with a person celebrating their kill, as long as they don't do it in a crazy, disrespectful way. That is a normal thing and always has been for humans. I know that argument's not a good one, and it's not an argument. I'm just saying it as it is, just a blanket statement. But I personally see nothing wrong with celebrating achieving something like that, securing your own food, especially if they did it in an efficient way, because it's not easy. Not everybody can just go out there and hunt. Like, it takes patience, it takes time, training, effort, and skill to be able to secure a clean hunt, provide food for your family for the next, month or so because you got yourself a big deer or something like that, is something to be celebrated. That is an accomplishment. And they contributed far less to animal suffering than people that got their meat from a factory farm, period. There's no other way to spin it. But of course, these moral superiority assholes that love sniffing their own farts will try and paint this person like Satan himself, like the devil, like the most evil person to ever exist, when they're not. They just understand where their food comes from, regardless of whether you want to reject if it's food or not. It is food. It is necessary for people to consume meat, the vast majority, to be healthy, to thrive, and to live a long, bountiful life. There's just really nothing to be upset about here other than the fact that you don't like humans. That's about it. You don't like the fact that humans are predators. You don't like the fact that humans are hunters, even though we are. And now this person towards the end wants to compare this person hunting to just going to the store and buying beans and stuff. Again, vast majority of people can't live off of that same garbage that you fucking eat all the time. Most people need animal products to thrive. It's that simple. What you should be comparing is hunting versus factory farming, not hunting versus being vegan. You're a dumbass. That is completely disingenuous. And it's not an argument. It's not a position. It's just pathetic, and it's embarrassing. And it's very reflective of these militant vegan assholes who don't actually care about animal well-being at all, because there's so many contradictions where there is something that is more favorable for the animals, but they go against it just because they hate humans. That's literally as far as it goes. Now this one is just straight up on the nose, not even trying to hide it, not even trying to pretend that the veil of animal liberation is the forefront of their actions. Nope, they admit it. Moral superiority is their motivation. Vegans are morally superior, and it's time we start acting like it. Any other injustice or crime, racism, sexism, murder to humans, we confidently assert that the people not engaging in those activities are morally superior to those who do. And yet, when someone refrains from animal exploitation to the extent they're able, most are reluctant to make the same claim of moral superiority. even among vegans. Why is this? Do most here not agree that the scale of needless animal exploitation engaged in today is as much or greater than the injustices humans face in the same age? Who today is actively paying 3 times a day for humans to be exploited and murdered? In the crimes we pay for and are directly complicit in, what human betrayals compare to the animal holocaust? We clearly are morally superior, and I don't think we should shy away from this title. Just as we wouldn't if confronted with a racist, sexist human murderer. If someone wants to continue engaging in animal exploitation, then they should know and recognize that they're morally inferior in doing so. And that can only happen when we start asserting our rightful title that we've earned through our actions. And yeah, would you believe that there's people that agree? Can you give an example how to assert moral superiority? Vegan, by the way. Noting that your diet leads to a superior moral standing is all it really takes. Say sentences like, as a vegan, or as somebody who has more compassion and empathy than most, and the hit will just keep coming. Now, obviously, this is not reflective of the entire vegan community. It's not even reflective of most. Let's be real with ourselves. But it does show a good amount of people that feel this way and think this way, and those vegans are the ones that are going out saying all this crazy, ridiculous nonsense. And it's not for the purpose of protecting animals. It's for feeling superior to you and being able to express that. And so they can tell you, well, I'm a vegan. And every time they say that, they get this dopamine boost in their head of moral superiority fucking meth. And they just feel this intense high because they feel so high above you. It's pretty pathetic. It's sad, honestly, and it is truly, truly embarrassing. And the worst part of it is they are exploiting animals too, because they're using animals suffering to have moral superiority and to flex that over other people. It's kind of disgusting, honestly.